Hello, I'm John McMestry, and welcome to the second video in visual facilitation for coaches. Um, this one is the one where we start to look at the 6 basics of visual facilitation. Last time we looked at some of the background and the neuroscience behind why you might want to learn some of these skills beyond I'd like to be able to draw a little bit better. Thinking about how we create connection when we writing over reading is part of learning and exploration and coaching, helps us to explore. It uses a different part of our brain and is a whole brain activity. Um, and the way that we make use of this for others when we're coaching a team or a group, or we're facilitating, or we're helping people to explore themselves, is to engage them in it and use the skills that we have um, to cheat a little bit, help to trick their brains into thinking that they are creating visualizations. And in order to do that, you probably need some of the skills to be able to do that. So today we're going to go through the 6 basics of visual facilitation. Um, Hang on, I will share my iPad again. It is coming. Here we are. Lovely. So yeah, that's what today's video will be about, the 6 basics of visual facilitation. Let's go with the drawing bit. So as I said in the last video, drawing along, copying what you see. I might go a little faster in this than I do when I teach this course live, because yeah, I suppose you can pause and you can go back. Everything that you see, I'll produce a PDF of at the end, but you will get the most by following along and joining in. So let's talk about the 6 basics. First of all, we're going to talk about text. We're going to talk about writing. We're going to talk about how people feel about that. Because when we did the little reflective template at the start of the last video, I asked for people to write their confidence, drawing and writing, in a work setting in front of people. And they're quite different things sometimes, actually. A lot of people will give 2 different scores. They'll give a score for writing, they'll give a score for drawing. And writing is something that you ask most people, they'll have an early childhood story about it. I have crap handwriting. I suppose I feel I have crap handwriting because certainly used to be the case in the UK that when you were about 10, you would learn to write properly. Americans call it cursive, joined up writing, whatever. But there was a year in school where that was a big focus. And I moved schools when I was about that age. And I moved from a school where it was going to be done next year to a school where it had been done the year before. And it was a posh school with fountain pens. And I'm a left-handed person. And wow, that was a nightmare. Everyone had better handwriting than me. I could not write. It was terrible. Actually, it's not that bad. It tends to be in your head a little bit. But there are some basic things we can do to improve the way in which we write. It's about choice, actually. It's about intentionality. There are choices we can make to put intent behind the way in which we write. You can't change your writing wholesale very easily, but it's probably not as bad as you think. So, I invite you to join in with this. I'm just going to write a phrase, just a nursery rhyme phrase. Let's go. Jack and Jill went up the hill. And the rule here is I would just like this written in your normal, everyday handwriting. Normal, everyday handwriting, not your Sunday best, just your everyday handwriting. And I'll try and do the same. Here we are. It's not too bad. I run the odd letter together. You can see, I mean, that doesn't really say went, does it? But you get it from the context. It's not too bad. It's not that hard to see. A little cheat we can do in this iPad is I can put a little grid on it. Actually, it's straighter than it used to be. A lot of people's writing will kind of slant downwards. By the way, you can always get notebooks and flip chart pages that have a little grey grid on them. Really helps. But yeah, I think that's all right. I don't feel too bad about it. I think my writing has got better as I've used it more. A lot of people don't really use it anymore. Um, let's think next. There is a thing that people often suggest when it comes to making writing clearer. It's often the first thing people say, write in caps. Okay, so let's write in caps. Let's do the same phrase. Again, Jack and Jill went up the hill, and let's write it in all capital letters. See how that goes. There's mine. Please notice how I do like super caps. The J's are like extra large caps. Um, it is, it looks less tidy to me. Maybe that's just me. But there is something about caps, and there is a sort of small but not tiny minority of the public who will read capital letters and feel like you are shouting at them. And I'm one of those people. Think of a certain American president who likes to post on social media in all caps. It feels like you're being shouted at. I feel like I'm being shaken, and what's being given to me is it hurts my brain. Um, I read an article a few years ago about how to make whiteboards more appealing and make them easier to understand. And someone said on it, always write in capitals. And it was one of those times when I felt I needed to argue with somebody online. It didn't go very well, but hey. Um, the thing about caps is they're not the natural flow of lettering that we're used to. We're not able to fill in the gaps in the same way. Our brains have to work harder to interpret them. Um, in the UK, we often have, if we think about road signs, the majority of road signs in the UK are written in mixed case. And they're written in mixed case because it takes a certain extra cognitive load to read all caps. And if you're driving along and you reading the sign and you miss the exit for Cambridge, that's your fault. And that's not as huge a deal as you being distracted by a sign full of capital letters that takes your attention and your energy and your cognitive effort. Certain things that you have to read and you have to see correctly. Stop signs, all caps. It's more important that you see it and that it grabs your attention. So although all caps are often clearer, they are not easier to read. It comes down to what is the thing that we're trying to achieve. Most of the time, when you're writing something on a flip chart or a piece of material or something, you want it to be easy to read. You don't need it to be clearer. Sometimes the odd piece of information people often say headings, but just something short for emphasis and impact in caps. Sure, fine, but not the whole thing because it hurts my brain and it hurts some other people's brains too. And it's probably not safety critical that it's read correctly. Okay, so what can you do? Um, we have one particular lever that we can use, which is pace. We can choose the pace at which we write. So I'm going to write at a very different pace in a minute. I'm going to write about half pace. You try as well. The bonus thing here, if you can do this comfortably, try not to join your letters up as well. Try to keep them separate. So ideally, half pace Normal mixed case writing, ideally not joined up. See what it looks like. Not bad. Yeah, when you look at it, I think you can see that these two were written by the same person. I think it has my personality in a way that the capital letters don't. I think that it is much more readable, easier to read. Now, some people will feel very uncomfortable writing at a much slower pace. It can be really hard. Also, I mean, if you're stood in front of a flip chart and you're thinking, oh my God, everyone's watching me, and I'm writing really slowly. Oh no. That can be quite a big deal as well. But people don't usually judge you for that. You're the person that it feels slower to, not usually the people who are reading it. And actually, we talk about pacing a room with the pace at which we speak and the tone which we use. You can do the same with writing. If you are writing something slowly, it adds intent and emphasis and importance to it. You don't need to write as much, just a few words to connect people. But when you write them slowly, with intent, people notice and pay attention to them in a different way. They carry a different weight. Yeah. Hmm. If you are particularly bothered about your writing, there's a good book, Take a Lettering Journey by Heather Martinez. Helps you look at the way in which you write, the shape you use for some of your letters. And it can be a lot of effort to change. The lever you really have is your pace. Choosing not to join up your letters as well. It can make a difference if you choose to do it. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen again. See where we are. Okay, so we have started and look at the first of the 6 basics of visual facilitation, writing. And guess what? We're going to go up here now. Um, this obviously is something I prepared earlier. I did the hard bit first. We'll talk about layouts and templates in a moment, actually. But by adding to this as we go along, it will again feel a bit like it was created in front of you, even though all I'm doing is adding a bit of writing in a few boxes or shapes or containers. But this will help us to see our journey through the 6 basics. And the next one, as I said, is a layout. So let's have a look at layout. Um, this is the way most people lay things out when they're, I don't know, writing on a flip chart or similar. Bullets. Um, there's a few things to say about them. It's quite easy actually from a layout point of view. You know, you get to the bottom of the page and you run out of space. And you move to the next page. Quite like that. Nice and easy. Yeah. Um, very linear. They have a direction, you know, one after the other. Maybe it's just the stuff that came first. Maybe it's most important. There's something to it, right? And I think it's boring as hell. My brain doesn't particularly enjoy it. I think you often find like a huge wasted space here. But this is often the way in which people lay things out. I'll give you a chance to keep this if you want. I'll show you something different in a minute. I suppose the two bits of advice that usually get given to people on any kind of course like this is titles and borders. And what you've seen is, so layout was at the top of this page, text was at the top of the other one. By putting a title of some kind on a page, you're showing some intent, whether it's pre-written or whether it's written at the start. You're showing that there is some intention behind it and that the page matters in some way, and that you know what's going to happen with it. There's some intention behind it. So it's entirely possible we can do that. We can say, yeah, go on then. I'm going to do some bullets. Why not? And then, so the other piece of advice you often get is about borders. So when I'm done, I put a border around it. And most of the reason people will think about both titles and borders, and they'll say, oh, it looks nice, it's pretty, and it does. It makes things look nicer, but actually it's because it makes them look started and it makes them look finished. When you put a border around something at the end, you are showing that you have completed that page, that image, that piece of work, whatever it is, that it mattered enough for you to draw something around it. Yeah, that makes a huge difference. Titles can go other places. No reason for it not to go in the middle. We can collect pieces of information around a title. Easily done. And again, we can do a border when we're finished. Yeah. There are a couple of different considerations when thinking about layout. You either know what is likely to emerge. There is some structure, you're sharing some information, you're following an exercise, or you don't. And something freeform is going to come at you as if you're sketchnoting a talk, let's say. If you know, you cheat. This is taken from one of the Cablo books, actually. A bunch of little templates and layouts. Didn't think I made that one up myself, did you? My suggestion would be, and I'll recommend these resources at the end, but my recommendation would be to Google Sketchnote poster layouts. You will find a million things like this, a million layouts that help you to determine a structure for the information that you have. And I'll share a few images of ones that I think are helpful. You'll recognize this one. There's a few more, winding roads, and coaches love an iceberg, don't we? A tree and so forth, and a racetrack. Yeah, definitely these kinds of things are great. If we go back to this one, I did the hard bit first. I did the prep. I did the pretty drawing. And all I'm doing now is adding some information to that template. And it looks like I did the whole thing in people's heads. People's brains make the connection. If I add your words to this, it feels like you were part of making it. And that's what happens when we have information where we know what the structure is and how it's going to emerge. We cheat and we prepare up front. Not always the case, though. It's worth bearing in mind that we also have times when information is just going to appear. And it's why when I don't sort of like I'm going to do bullet points and it's going to be linear. It's going to be structured like that. One direction, one dimension. So what you do, I suppose, when I'm going to record information, I don't know the structure is going to emerge. I divide my page. Mentally, I don't tend to draw this, but you draw a pencil line if you want. A portrait page, one line down the middle. A landscape page, 3 columns. So if I was going to go and, I don't know, attend a talk and sketchnote it, I might write my title. I've got a little person holding a sign and so forth. And I'm going to listen. I'm going to pay attention to this talk and write down some things that I think are quite interesting. Oh, that was a good point. Yes, I like that. Yep. By having these columns, it forces me to operate in an extra dimension. It forces me to not just go down the page. And I think that makes a huge difference. Yeah. Problem is, when you get to the bottom here, and you're like, I don't know how much more time I need. I don't know how much more information there's going to be. We have to make a call and we get layout anxiety, or I certainly do. And the layout anxiety says to me, do I turn the page or not? Do I try and cram everything into the bottom? Usually best not. There we go. Made the choice. Put my border on. And I'm gonna continue R2 over here. I'm listening to a talk, let's say. And oh, really good point made by the speaker. Yep. Oh yes, that was a good one, right? I'm like, oh no, they've finished and I've only used half a page there or less. I bet you I could have squeezed that onto the previous page. And I feel really upset about it. Ruined. Actually, it's not. Because borders are absolutely magic and make almost anything look like it was intended to be. Layout. Huge difference this makes. So that's where we are. We've done writing. Writing is about pace and tension. Don't use caps heavily. Slow down if you want it to have some importance and it's a matter. Then we moved on to layout. Titles and borders do make a huge difference. It shows people that things matter, that things were important. You knew what you were doing, you had a plan. If you're in a position where you know the structure of the information that's going to emerge, go find a template, prepare it beforehand, draw it, bring it, print it, and then just add information to it as it comes. If you don't, divide your page in half. Helps you to work across the page, not be so linear. And if you have layout anxiety, you get towards the end of the page, it's usually best to turn the page. Borders are magic. Yeah, that's where we are. Next up, everybody. Let's do containers. So, containers, or the little boxes, shapes that you see me putting around text. And I do this, I was going to say not because they look pretty, they do look pretty, and that's quite nice, and I like that, right? But they actually do it. I do it to group information, but more than anything to separate information. Separate points, separate bits of information. Yes. So I'm just going to do a few. There's a little bit of information. That's a nice simple one. Cloud, the bubble. Maybe if I put a couple of circles next to it, becomes a thought bubble. Yeah. Next, ever popular one. Watch how I do this. Little pointy, like that. And then around. See, speech bubble. Let's do that again. We do the little pointy bit first, and then draw around. Sometimes they look better than others. This is one of my favorites next. I always think of it as like Batman, kapow, bang, something like that. Splat. It's emphasis. This is important. Yeah, that's how it looks to me at least. Okay. A few little points about these. We draw a few. What you can say when you look at them is I might have just drawn those because I fancy drawing some different shapes. But when people look at that, they'll probably mentally group together the three that are in the bubbles and say, oh, that other one must be different. So there's some consideration to be given to what you choose to do. Yeah, because this can happen intentionally or by accident. So I'm going to draw some boxes in a second. A couple of different ways to draw boxes. I was told, and this sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, that if you leave your pen on the page, you often end up with a really wonky box. Whereas if you draw separate lines, it looks more like you meant it to be like that. I can never decide. But there's 3 boxes. What we can do is we can sort of customize them a little bit. That first one looks like a pin card to me. Second one, there you go. I think they're kind of screws. Some people might think drawing pins, something like that. And that, I think, is sticky tape and a sellotape. If you're of a certain age, you might think photo corners. But yeah, okay. The thing we have here is similar to that thing in the top right. We have interpretation. Because sometimes people will look at these and they will think different things. They'll look at the pin card on the left and think that's kind of movable. Well, that's been added. The one in the middle, if that's screws, I think of it like a plaque. That might be like immovable and permanent, really important. The sticky tape one, I don't know. Maybe it's temporary. Or maybe I just thought these looked pretty. This is the thing. Some people will interpret these things and others won't. And you have to be careful. It's actually more about consistency than anything else. When I teach, I use a lot of quotes sometimes. And I think quotes from authors and books and things are quite important. So I put them in the plaque. And I go, ah, yes, this is important. They use it almost like a consistent typography. So all I want you to do is give some thought to which containers you choose, because sometimes people will read things into them and sometimes they won't. Okay, a couple of other practicalities. Containers tend to get people to block their text into little square shapes. If we do really long bits of text, and try and put a speech bubble around it, that is damn hard work. And it doesn't look right. You're getting people to write less, to collect smaller amounts of information, to pick out words instead of writing whole paragraphs in little blocks of text. It's really helpful. Also, the fact that these things end up quite square helps you to lay them out better. Speaking of that, laying them out, generally you'll write text and then you'll put a container around it. If you do it the other way around, we have this risk. Just going to write some text. Oh no, I ran out of space. There are exceptions, but generally write, block and lay out your text and then add your container. Last thing on this page, overlaps. So here's the title, and we're going to put some bubbles of text around it. And maybe this is our page, and we don't have a huge amount of space. So if we had all our bubbles completely separate and away from each other, we're going to run out of space quickly. So instead, we're going to overlap them. So the rule about overlapping is anything that is already on the page is in front of anything that you write later. So that title box is on the page, it's front. So I'm going to write some text near it, and then I'm going to draw a bubble around it. But the bubble kind of starts behind there. And then if I do another bit of text, the bubble for that is behind the title and behind the bubble I'd already drawn. You do it again, that one's behind there. Do it again, that one's behind both of them. And I tend not to quite join the lines up. Okay. Let's do a few more. Just a few more helpful ones for you. I'm quite a big fan of these banners that are used at the top of the pages. They're quite nice titles. So what you do is you put them in a rectangle or a square or whatever, in a box, and then you draw two little triangles underneath. And then you extend out from the triangles, and then you do little pointies. There you go. Quite like them. Big fan of them. Signs next. Might just be a box. There you go. For some reason, I always feel like a sign should be on a hill. Don't know why. Looks better. Slightly more complicated type of sign. There you've got three little bits of text like this that are kind of related. There we are. And we do three little arrow signs. We'll join them up with a pole like that. Guess what? Has to be on a hill. Some more practical stuff for the facilitators. You've already seen me do a piece of paper because I kind of used it on my layout pages. Piece of paper, so you can have the corner cut off. There you go. But actually, if you add, they don't have to be tidy, just some messy lines like that. Becomes a stack of paper or a document. They also quite like a book. So some people say it looks like a bird. And then we draw lines down. And again, some messy pages. Flip charts, whiteboards, that sort of thing. Quite often use them. Flip chart might just be, again, a lot of these start as a box, don't they? There's the legs, there's the one behind. And this is, you know, that kind of whiteboard that's on wheels in every office. Always have them. There we are. That's it. I often look around at this point and think, what am I forgetting? There's more containers. You go find them. But this is enough. It's enough to add some variety. It's enough to add some implied meaning if you choose to. It's enough to add some structure, separation, and interest to the things that you do. Containers are entirely about separating and grouping the information that you collect or that you share. They do make things look nice. They are pretty. Just give some consideration to the interpretation that people might have for them, what they might mean. Use some consistency in how you use them. Generally speaking, you write stuff first, then you put a container around it. They help you to block your text. You can overlap them. And there's a bunch there for you to try. So give it a go. These three that we've done so far are the foundational ones of your 6 basics. The stuff next gets less important. It's about adding a little more to it. But these 3 things so far give you a huge amount. Should we do little people? I love this. I remember my wife telling me that I couldn't draw stick people. And she's right. Stick people don't look right. These little people look wonderful. The way I tend to draw them. An upside down, slightly elongated U. And then a little circle. Now my little circles, usually I don't join them up. There is a danger here because if you draw a few next to each other, Their heads sometimes float off into the distance. So be a little careful. Your little peoples can do all sorts of things. They can think. Oh, it's thinking that. She's thinking that. They can have a conversation. They can point at each other. They can be pretty angry. I often like to show the direction of them with this little nose. But actually be careful, because if you draw the nose too long, it looks like a beak. Um, our little people can hold things. I often like them to hold signs, actually. That works really well. Um, don't know, there's a present. Oh. Um, I really use them to add flavour and personality to things. They hold signs, they have thoughts, they ask questions. I sprinkle them through the things that I draw. And they have so much to them. Our little people can be so happy, or it's be the saddest thing you'll see today. It's very sad, little people. Actually, we'll make them sadder. There we go. Um, I don't usually draw them with legs. Can if you want a bit of movement. One's running. Another way to draw them, and this beats stick people. You draw them with a little body like that. Yeah. There is so much, though, temptation to embellish them, to do clever things with them, and that creates the opportunity for misunderstanding. If we have two little people here, I wonder what they're up to. Some people say they're about to play pat a cake. Um, some people ask me if they're about to fight, and I say, well, they're about to hug. I mean, if I did that, it becomes a little bit more obvious. But the opportunity for misinterpretation is there. The opportunity for customizing them to such an extent. I just don't think it's needed. You can show so much emotion with these little people. So a couple of examples where I think it goes less well. One of my books of examples, there's a little people in it like this. And under it is written woman. Because obviously, according to this book, all women have long hair and all people who have long hair are women. I can see what it's trying to do. But there's an opportunity there to upset people, rightly so. I'm not a big fan of that. Um, I once spoke to a maternity coach about this, someone who worked with new parents. Um, and she was talking about what she wanted to draw little people to represent some of the couples and parents that she worked with. And she said, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to draw a pregnant mother, aren't I? All right, okay. Let's do this. And she went, oh dear. Oh dear, that's going to upset some people. Right, okay, forget that. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to draw a parent holding a baby. She said, all right, okay. This baby's just a little person, isn't it? So I'll just get a little person as the parent, and they're holding the baby. Oh dear, that doesn't look good either, does it? Hmm, okay. As we try to customize the people more, we leave ourselves open to misinterpretation. I think the exception is when it's personal. So I know someone who draws all her little people like this. And that's meant to be her. And she wears bright lipstick and it's part of her. And that's perfectly okay. When you're talking about yourself and there's some choice in it, you can customize. But you often don't need to, because there's so much that these little people can do. We sprinkle them. We sprinkle the little people around the work that we do to create a little bit of personality, to create a little bit of emotion and a little bit of interest. And that's why our fourth visual facilitation basic is people. Onto the home stretch. Okay. Straight on to shading. So, I'm usually asked, oh, why do you shade stuff, color stuff in, whatever. And I guess the first answer is it looks pretty and it looks nice. It makes things look better for sharing. But actually, it's very similar to borders. It is about showing that something mattered, showing that something is finished. The last thing we do is shade it if we're going to keep it, if we're going to share it, if we're going to show it, if we're going to come back to it. There are a few types of shading to consider. So, I was taught that there is a light source. And that light source is in the top left of your screen, your page or whatever. What I would say, you can choose that light source to be somewhere else if you like, because some of the things I was taught about shading, I like to break the rules. You put the light source wherever you like. Probably not the bottom right, that might be a bit weird, but you'd rather have it on the right or you'd rather have it somewhere in the middle, go for it. But if I'm gonna, I've got it in my head that my light source is top left, so it is. So, pastel, grey, something like that. If we've got a light source in the top left, what it means is that we have a shadow in the bottom and the right. Bottom and right. There we are. That banner, that's bottom, that's right. That other thing, that kind of points towards the left, so I wouldn't be shading that. Yeah, there we go. Boxes, it's easy. With the speech bubble, maybe like that. Yeah, and with the emphasis one. Again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be that tidy. If we go back and we look at some of our containers, we can do them. We can shade them. And I have this hugely therapeutic. I can sit for hours and shade things just like this. Not necessarily the best use of time, but actually, I once got caught just standing in front of a group of people shading something. And I got lost in it for a few minutes. And then one of them pointed out, John, you've kind of been stood there for 5 minutes, just colouring in your flip chart. I was like, oh yes, it was meant for you lot to carefully consider and reflect on what's going on. I think I just about got away with it. This is just about the only time I'm allowed to shade things. It shows that something's finished. It further helps, the shadow helps to separate information again in the same way as our containers generally do. Yeah, big fan of that. Right. Let's talk about material, but actually I also think depth may be a better way to describe it. Some things, usually things that are like coming out from the page that have some depth, some 3D to them, we shade them differently. If you shaded your little person on the outside, I think it wouldn't look quite right. So instead we tend to shade inside. I usually do this with things that are very 3D, like signs. You can make arguments for some things should be more or less 3D, you know? But there's my, where's it gone? There's my signs, I think. Yeah, I think they look better inside, bottom and right. Yeah, okay. And if we go to the little people, let's shade a few of them, shall we? Yeah. And then we'll shade outside on the bubbles and the speech bubbles as well. Yeah. We'll just jump off the page a little bit more. It's that depth to them. I think it makes a difference. That present, definitely. That'll be inside. And I don't have the exact reasoning behind this. I never quite got my head around it. But I think you just need to be really consistent. If you shade something a certain way, then you make sure that you shade all other instances of that the same way. Because otherwise people will probably notice. Inconsistency is what people notice. The last one is shine, but actually I'm going to add the word highlight to it because this is where I break all the rules. So shine is supposed to be stuff that's round and might have a light on it, gets like a little reflection. You can imagine it, can't you? For kind of a clock, there's a little reflection. A light bulb, it's a little shine off it, isn't there? But I guess for me, this is where I go, I don't think that looks great. So wouldn't it look nicer if that shine was in a kind of yellowy colour? Oh, it is. Oh, do you know what? I think it look even better if I just shaded the whole thing in yellow. And I did me little, oh yes, that's much better. Yeah. And I'm going to go, oh, I always do this. Those little pins, they look so much better in red. I think it's about sprinkling a little bit of colour. Not going mad with it, but sprinkling a little bit. What you get is be careful because if you use a felt tip somewhere, if you've got your highlighter out and you draw something, you shade something, and then you shade next to it, a bit on top, kind of bleeds. The way it works, it doesn't look right if you're shading large areas. You've got to use it carefully. And I'll use it in things like I showed you before, didn't I? I have the little pin. I think that should be bright red. I like my little screws be brass, even if I'm just using a grey or a pastel colour. Those bits of sellotape immediately looks better to me. Where did I have it? I had a little heart here, didn't I? Yeah. It's about using a splash of colour to highlight things without going mad. This is shading. Find the rules that work for you. Be consistent with what you do. Add a little bit of joy to what you're creating for yourself, if no one else. Maybe I'm going to cheat, actually. I should say shading, not shadow, shouldn't I? There we are. Yeah. We are getting there. Last. Up. And absolutely least, and I'll explain that in a second, is icons. Interestingly, that's what everyone comes here for. But it's not what matters. I'll tell you a little story. There was someone I was teaching some of this stuff, and I taught him some of these skills. And then I was going to see him again in I don't know, a few weeks' time, month's time. And when I saw him, I asked him how it was going. And he said, yeah, actually, it was really useful stuff. And he told me about how he went to a company all hands, a town hall meeting. He's a manager, went and thought, right, okay, I'm going to take some of this information, record it back for my team. And he sat next to someone he didn't really know. And he started recording information, writing stuff down, laying it out, some containers around it. He was quite pleased with himself. And the person next to him looked over his shoulder and said, "Is that supposed to be a sketch note?" He said, "Yeah." The guy next to him said, "You're doing it all wrong. It's meant to be lots of pictures, and you've just got writing." Crushed the guy. I was really angry, actually. Because what this is about is this isn't about producing pretty pictures. This is about organizing and connecting to information and knowledge and learning. And the icons are the least important bit of it. They are there to add a little something extra. That's what we're after. That's what we're hoping people will do with them. Let's consider them. Because really, there are two kinds of icons. We have sort of practical and a context-based ones. And then we have what I'm going to call metaphor and personal ones. So you work in a field, right? You work in an area that matters to you. You work in an area that is, I don't know, specific to your skills and your knowledge. And you probably have to have a vocabulary that works with that. A set of 10, 15, 20 icons that are in your head that don't require a huge amount of energy and effort for you to just chuck them into something and draw them because you remember them. So I'm a coach, right? So coachy things work for me, don't they? Guess what? A light bulb. We had one before. I use them quite often. I like people to succeed. I forever find myself drawing little trophies that people might be holding. What's next? A brain. I was talking to you about neuroscience, wasn't I? Now, I always find these, depends who's looking at them, whether they think it's a brain or not. That is until you decide to colour it in. Oh, I think that colour's too strong, isn't it? I coloured it in oh, that's the pink. There you go. Now it looks like a brain. That's better. What else? Things are always going wrong. It's a bomb. It's going to blow up. There you go. Some people think it looks like a bauble. On the theme of things going wrong, a shark. What else might we do? You're facilitating a workshop. Got to have a cup of tea. Break time, isn't it? What else? Again, coaches help people to find goals. I always think a bit of a treasure chest. Yeah, there's more. There's lots more. Go find them. I'll tell you some more where to find some of them in a minute. But this matters for you to have the ones that work for you. I had someone on my course once who was an orchestral coach and said, "Oh, this is good, John, right? Okay, I need to be able to draw a little person holding a violin." And I said, "I've got no idea how to draw a violin. I don't know how to do that." So we opened Google image search and we searched for sketch note violin. And we all drew one together. Years later, she'll remember how to draw that violin. I've got no clue. None whatsoever. Because I don't need to know it. So yeah, these are our practical context-based stuff to sprinkle in to our work. metaphor, things that matter to the people we're working with, is what's next. So metaphor in coaching comes from the client, right? We don't give it to them, but they say something that matters. We draw it out and we use it to connect to the goal or the work they're doing. I think metaphor is really powerful. Depends what they say. You are not going to have in the moment an icon drawing a picture for everything that might come out. Or you might have a way to find one. You might have the opportunity to stop and to think. Now, you don't distract yourself if you're working with someone. Maybe you leave a little space in your drawing, in your diagram, for a space to put something that the client has said that matters. Let's see how you might deal with that. Okay, so I've already talked about Googling for Sketchnote and whatever you're after. But Bicablo in particular produced some visual dictionaries, which are a set of really helpful to find things. And this one, Bicablo one, I only put out the cover with me, is actually one I usually carry around with me. I'll make sure I share this. But the way you might do this is you might go, well, hang on, right, okay. So I'm working with a team and they keep talking about putting out fires. And what they want to do is they want to create a set of fire extinguishers for different kinds of fires. And you go, oh, that's cool. And they've mentioned it a few times. I go, right, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up. I appreciate this is a little blurry. Somewhere down there it says, oh, fire extinguisher, page 25. Click through this, and that's page 25. Oh, look, there's a fire extinguisher. That's quite nice. Now, I'm just going to copy it at this point. I'm going to go right. Yeah, not bad, does it? Yeah, we can probably just about live with that. Let's pop that onto the iPad. So if I was to draw oh, I've got them in yellow. Hang on. If I was to draw the fire extinguisher, I'll just copy it again. Perfect. And it connects people to the thing they said. It again shows how much it matters. It was a good one I did with a team where I was doing a retrospective with them. And the last few minutes of it, they started talking about how difficult it was to get their work in the hands of their users, how it was basically going through airport security. And they joked about it and they laughed about it. And as they were leaving the room, everyone was still talking about it. It was their metaphor, not mine. So I thought, oh, I'm coming to see them again in a few weeks. And I went and I looked up a bunch of stuff around how to create, I don't know. I made a airport X-ray machine. I drew some post-it notes that had suitcases on them for them to write things in. We had flight attendants and pilots and the airport departure lounge on bits of flip chart paper, and I did all this preparation for them. And it was such an engaged session because it wasn't my metaphor. It was a bit of iconography that connected to the team, to what they had said. That's what we use icons for. Good. One tiny little extra thing. So there was a way to break rules about containers and writing the text first. I'm not going to draw this live, but pretty much any icon can be a container as well. They can be things that we add writing to, that we put post-it notes in, that we encourage people to add things to. What you generally need to do is just make them a little bit wider. You can see the little person and the trophy a bit wider so that you can write stuff inside them or you can add things to them. Present makes a really good kind of four-box model. You know how consultants and coaches love four-box models. So that's that. That is the four basics. Writing, layout, containers, people, shading, and icons, with the first three being really foundational. At this point on the live course, I usually ask people to do some work. I'm just going to put this here. You would need to go find someone to do this with. A lot of people come to this course to be able to use these skills with others. But actually, the most helpful practice you can have is to sketch note something live, to be put under some pressure to collect some information that isn't yours. You don't know the form that's going to appear. Because then, when you're filling in a template that you've already designed, it becomes very easy in front of a group of people. So this is a set of written instructions. This is a brilliant thing to do. This is a great combination of things. This comes from training in the back of the room originally, but drawn in a visual facilitation style. And we put the instructions on the screen in front of people. You imagine you're in a workshop. You can be talking, and people will read this. Actually, use the multitasking. You leave this on a screen or on a flip chart, and people will be able to continue to see the instructions. So this is really just a chance for, if you can find somebody who will talk to you for a few minutes. I often say about your work. To be honest, it's usually about something the person is interested in. Note down the things that they say. Do yourself a title, write down some bits, draw out some small pieces of information. Try not to write paragraphs. Put containers around them, lay them out. At the end, after a few minutes, I would normally tell people that you just do this for, I don't know, something in the region of 3 minutes. Take some time to add a border, put some shading, put a couple of extra icons in if you want. Maybe show the person who's spoken to you for a little while the thing that you've drawn and talk about what you drew out versus what they meant. This is a brilliant exercise. The other thing I tend to do is set some homework for people, because this is often the halfway point in the course that I run. And just say, go and find something to do this with. And it doesn't have to be a person. Maybe you could instead sit and watch the television tonight. Watch EastEnders and record a few things that happened. Look at some of the plot and the storyline. Maybe plan something you're doing, draw the solution to a problem, create something, do a bit of practice. The practice that no one has to see, because you can just throw it away because it doesn't really matter. This is the thing that helps you. So yeah, there we are. I think we're at the end of this. This will be the longest of the videos, I think. And we've looked at the 6 basics of visual facilitation, the drawing skills, but also a little bit about how they get applied and how they work in people's heads. The next video, examples, tools, practicalities, we'll talk a bit about, I'll show some examples of stuff that I've done. I will share a few more things like the written instructions as an idea, but a few other little ideas and thoughts about using these skills. And some stuff around, I don't know, pens, maybe a little bit about iPads, but we'll do more about that in the last video. But some of the resources that I've talked about. And that's that. So thank you, and I will see you on the next one.